The desert has a way of swallowing men whole. Some vanish beneath the endless sun, others dissolve into the bottle, and a few find themselves standing on the edge of towns they never meant to reach. That's how he appeared. A cowboy with dust on his boots and silence in his eyes, leaning heavy on the wooden rail of a porch that wasn't his. The town was nothing but a dying cluster of buildings, a saloon sagging under its own weight, a church with its cross tilting, and the faint rattle of a windmill that hadn't tasted water in months. He thought no one saw him. But she did. A woman in her late 30s, maybe older if you read the shadows instead of the light. Hair the color of burnt copper, skin touched by both sun and whiskey, and eyes sharp enough to cut leather. She leaned against the saloon doorway, smoking slow, watching him like she'd been waiting her whole damn life for this stranger to appear. When she finally spoke, her voice wasn't soft. It cracked the air like a whip. "Cowboy, is your mind always between my legs? Is that why you look so lost out here?" The words hit him harder than any bullet he'd dodged in his past. He should have answered, should have said something clever, something cold, something that put her in her place. But his tongue stayed heavy, his lips dry. And for the first time in years, the cowboy felt cornered by nothing more than a woman's question. She smiled slow, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who had seen men fall at her feet and bleed at her command. He tipped his hat lower, hoping to disappear behind the brim, but she didn't allow it. "Don't bother hiding," she said. "This place is too small for secrets, and I already know the kind of hunger you carry." The cowboy shifted his boots against the wooden boards, the echo louder than he liked. He wasn't here for women, not for games, not for anything but rest. At least that's what he told himself. But there was something in her voice, in her stance, that made him feel like he'd stepped into a trap laid years before his arrival. Behind her, the saloon doors creaked open and shut with the night breeze, carrying the smell of old whiskey, smoke, and gunpowder that never truly faded. She let the silence hang, dragging the last puff of her smoke before tossing it into the dust. "Come inside, cowboy," she said. "You look thirsty, and lost men always are." Cowboys, most of you watch but still haven't subscribed. We're riding close to 1,000. So saddle up with me, hit that subscribe button, and let's ride this trail together. Inside the saloon, the world felt heavier. The outside desert was dry and merciless, but this place was damp with sweat, regret, and the kind of perfume that clung to a man's skin long after he left. Lamps burned low, casting golden halos over tables scarred by knives and fists. The air tasted of ash and whiskey, and the piano in the corner was silent, its keys chipped, its song long dead. The woman walked ahead without turning back, knowing the cowboy would follow. And he did, not because he trusted her, not because he wanted her, but because her words had carved a path for him, and he couldn't seem to step off it. She poured whiskey without asking, the amber liquid catching the lamplight as if it held a fire of its own. The glass slid across the table toward him, her fingers lingering on the rim for a second too long. "Drink," she said. Her voice was low now, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. The cowboy lifted the glass, the smell biting at his nose. He didn't drink fast. Men who drank fast died fast, and he'd been alive too long to make that mistake. He let the whiskey touch his lips, burning slow until his throat felt raw. Her eyes never left him. "You carry silence like it's gold," she said, leaning back in her chair. "But I've seen silence before." "Silence is just another name for guilt." The cowboy's jaw tightened. He said nothing. She laughed softly, not the laugh of joy, but of someone who's heard every excuse, every lie, every plea. "You think you're different from the others who walked in here? They all looked the same, tired, hungry, haunted, and every single one of them thought they could hide it from me." He set the glass down. "I didn't come for trouble." The words sounded weak even to him, like they didn't belong to his mouth. Her smile widened, and for a moment, she almost looked kind. "Trouble doesn't need to be invited, cowboy. Trouble already knows your name." She leaned forward, her elbows resting on the table, her lips close enough that her breath warmed the rim of his glass. "You're running from something. I can smell it on you. The road doesn't leave a man empty unless he's carrying ghosts." The cowboy's hand twitched toward his hat, but he didn't pull it off. He wasn't ready to show that kind of respect. "Not yet. You talk too much," he muttered. "And you think too little," she answered. Quick as a pistol shot, the silence between them thickened, heavy with something neither wanted to name. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, making them tremble like bones. Somewhere upstairs, footsteps moved, too light to be a man's, too careless to belong to someone afraid. This saloon was alive, breathing, watching. She filled her own glass and drank it in one breath, letting the burn fuel her words. "Men died in this town," she said softly. "Not from sickness, not from hunger, but from greed and betrayal. Every nail in these walls is nailed over a body that never got buried right." Her eyes locked on his, sharp and burning. "Do you know why I ask the questions I ask? Why I said what I said on that porch?" He shook his head slowly. "Because I wanted to see if you were like the rest. If your hunger was only between your legs, or if it reached deeper, into the part of you that can't ever be filled." The cowboy didn't move. He didn't blink. Her hand slid across the table, fingers grazing the wood as if drawing a map. "There's a hole in this land, cowboy. A hole dug by men who thought they owned the world. They took everything, blood, land, love, and left me with nothing but ashes. I've been waiting years for someone foolish enough, desperate enough, to sit where you're sitting right now." His throat felt dry, the whiskey doing nothing to ease it. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. Her lips curved into that dangerous smile again, the one that promised both salvation and ruin. "Not what you think, not yet. For now, I want your ears. I want you to listen to the kind of story that stains a soul, because if you don't hear it, you'll never understand why this place will bury you the same way it buried the others." She poured again, the glasses filling like an hourglass turned upside down. And with the next sip, she began her story, low, intimate, every word a whisper soaked in smoke and blood. The whiskey burned, but her words burned deeper. She leaned back, letting the chair creak beneath her weight, eyes half closed as if she were trying to remember a time before her voice had turned sharp, before her laughter had turned hollow. The cowboy sat across from her, silent as ever. But the silence was no longer a shield, it was a noose tightening around his neck. "You think you're running from something," she began, her voice a low rasp. "But you don't know the first thing about being hunted. About having the devil himself carve his initials into your life." The cowboy's jaw flexed. He didn't like her tone, didn't like the way her words seemed to peel back the skin of his soul. But he didn't stop her. Something in him wanted to hear, needed to. "My name," she said, "is Lydia Cross." The way she said it was heavy, as if the name itself had been carried like a coffin for too many years. "Cross," the cowboy repeated softly, though it wasn't a question. He'd heard the name somewhere, maybe on the road, maybe in a campfire whisper, but he couldn't place it. She gave him a look that cut through his thoughts. "Do you know what happened in this town, cowboy? Do you know why half the windows are boarded? Why the ground feels hollow under your boots?" He shook his head. "They came riding out of the hills at dawn," she said, her eyes far away now, staring past him, into the dust of memory. "Mercenaries, killers hired by men with too much money and not enough patience. They said the land was theirs, that the water in the creek belonged to them, that we were trespassers in our own home." Her voice broke for a moment, but she pushed it down, poured herself another drink and swallowed the pain with the liquor. "They killed my husband first, shot him in the yard before breakfast, so that the chickens scattered with feathers in the air like snow. They laughed while they did it. Laughed. Then they dragged my sister out, tied her to the post, and made me watch as they—" Her hand trembled on the glass, but she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The cowboy's fists clenched on the table, knuckles pale. "They left me alive," Lydia whispered. "Not because of mercy. Because they thought a broken woman was no threat. They wanted me to remember. They wanted me to rot with it." The room went quiet. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. The cowboy's eyes lifted, and for the first time since stepping foot in that saloon, he spoke with weight. "Why are you telling me this?" Lydia leaned forward, her face inches from his. her eyes a storm. Because men like you come and go, always thinking they can outrun what's behind them. I've been waiting, Cowboy, waiting for one who doesn't just carry guilt, but who carries rage. I saw it the moment you stepped on my porch. You're not lost. You're bleeding on the inside. And bleeding men are useful. He stared at her, breath heavy. He wanted to deny it, wanted to push the truth away, but the words clawed too close. She was right. He was bleeding, and he had been for years. What do you want? He asked. Her lips curved, not a smile, not quite, but something sharper. I want fire. I want blood. I want the men who ruined this town buried in the dirt they claimed, and I want you to help me put them there. The cowboy looked down at his hands, scarred and cracked, hands that had killed before and would kill again. He thought of the faces that haunted him, the brothers he'd left in shallow graves, the promises he'd broken. You don't know me, he muttered. Oh, I know you, Lydia said. I know exactly what kind of man you are. Because I used to believe in good men. I buried one. Now I only believe in dangerous men, the kind who can make other dangerous men disappear. Her words struck him like a hammer. There was no seduction in her tone now, no game. Only raw fury wrapped in whiskey and smoke. The cowboy's silence stretched, but Lydia didn't fill it. She let it settle, heavy and suffocating, until he finally spoke. Where are they? Her eyes lit with a fire that had been waiting for years. Not far. They camp in the hills, drinking themselves fat on stolen whiskey, riding into town whenever they want to remind us who holds the whip. He shifted in his seat, adjusting the weight of the gun at his hip. His fingers brushed the grip like it was an old friend. You think I'll just follow you into hell? He asked. Her laugh was bitter, sharp. Cowboy, you've been walking in hell your whole damn life. The only difference now is, I'm asking you to aim your fire at someone who deserves it. The whiskey bottle was nearly empty now, but neither cared. The air between them had shifted. Desire and fury, pain and purpose all tangled together. Lydia stood, the chair legs scraping against the floor. Meet me at dawn, she said. By the old church. If you've got any fire left in you, we'll burn this land clean together. She walked away, her steps echoing on the wooden boards, leaving the cowboy alone with the shadows. He stared at his glass, at the last drop of whiskey trembling at the bottom. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he was drinking to forget or to prepare. The desert doesn't forgive. When the sun falls, it does not rest. It sharpens its silence, fills the air with a cold that cuts bone, and lays a blanket of shadows across the earth. That night, the cowboy found himself standing outside the old church, its cross tilted, its wood gray and split, like faith itself had rotted away in this place. He thought she wouldn't come. Part of him hoped she wouldn't. But then he heard the click of boots, the swish of a long coat brushing against the dust. Lydia emerged from the dark like a spirit summoned by hate, a rifle slung over her shoulder and a revolver resting easy on her hip. You came, she said, her breath fogging in the chill. The cowboy adjusted his hat, eyes narrowing beneath the brim. Didn't have anywhere else to go. Her smirk was faint, but enough. Good, because once we start this, there's no turning back. They saddled up in silence. His horse was lean and restless. Hers was dark and broad, like a beast carved from night itself. The trail to the hills was narrow, lined with twisted trees that looked more like skeletons than wood. Coyotes howled in the distance, and every sound echoed too loud, as if the land itself was listening. The closer they rode, the heavier the air grew. Whiskey fires glimmered against the rocks ahead, the mercenaries' camp. Shadows of men danced across the flames, their laughter thick and cruel, spilling into the night. Lydia dismounted first, crouching low, eyes burning with a light that outshone the moon. There, she whispered. Those bastards! Every laugh is stolen from someone's grave. The cowboy crouched beside her, scanning the camp. A dozen men, maybe more. Guns within reach, bottles in their hands. They were careless, arrogant, convinced no one dared touch them. Too many, he muttered. Her hand brushed his arm, not soft, but steady. You've killed worse odds. The cowboy glanced at her, and for a moment the moon lit her face, half shadow, half flame. There was no fear there, only the kind of hunger that makes a woman more dangerous than any man. She raised her rifle, slow, deliberate, lining her sight on the man closest to the fire. "I want you to see this," she whispered. "I want you to remember the sound of justice when it finally screams." The cowboy didn't stop her. He only watched as her finger tightened on the trigger. The crack of the shot split the night. The man by the fire jerked back, his bottle shattering, his chest blooming red. The camp erupted in chaos, men stumbling, shouting, reaching for weapons. The cowboy drew his revolver in one smooth motion, the metal flashing silver under the moonlight. Then the killing began. They moved like two storms colliding, Lydia's rifle firing sharp and cold. Each bullet guided by years of rage, while the cowboy's revolver sang fast and brutal, his aim honed by a lifetime of running from shadows. Men fell into the dirt, their screams swallowed by gunfire. One mercenary rushed him with a knife, eyes wild. The cowboy caught him by the wrist, twisted hard, and slammed the barrel against his skull. The man crumpled before he could breathe. Another fired from behind a wagon, the bullet grazing the cowboy's shoulder. He gritted his teeth, spun, and shot twice, the second round catching the man in the throat, silencing him forever. Lydia was fire and fury. She stood tall against the blaze of the camp, hair wild, coat whipping around her as she reloaded with hands that didn't shake. Her rifle cracked again, and another body dropped into the dust, but the fight wasn't clean. Two of the mercenaries broke past the gunfire, charging at Lydia with blades. For a heartbeat, she froze, the memory of her sister flashing like lightning across her mind. The cowboy saw it. He didn't think, he fired. 1, 2, 3 shots. Each one finding flesh, each one pulling her back from the abyss. She spun toward him, her eyes wide, lips trembling. Not with fear, but with something deeper. Gratitude, maybe. Or desire twisted with rage. "Don't you dare stop now," she shouted, reloading, her voice shaking the night. Together they cut the camp down to silence. The fire sputtered, crackling over the bodies sprawled in the dirt, shadows tangled in death. Smoke curled toward the stars like the souls of men being carried away. The cowboy stood still, breathing hard, revolver empty, hands shaking only after the fight was done. Lydia walked through the corpses like a queen surveying her ruined court. She kicked one man's body, spat at another, and then stopped over the last one alive, a wounded mercenary crawling, blood soaking the ground. She crouched beside him, her voice low and venomous. "Do you remember me?" The man's eyes widened in terror. "He did, good," she said, and with one steady pull of her trigger, she ended him. Silence. Only the fire crackled. Only the wind moved. Lydia turned to the cowboy, her face pale in the moonlight. Her lips trembling now, not from rage, but from something else entirely. "You saved me back there," she said. He holstered his revolver, his voice gravel. "Didn't do it for you," but the way he looked at her betrayed the lie. She stepped closer, the night pulling tight around them. Her hand brushed his chest, fingertips lingering over the scar where the bullet had grazed him. "You bleed for me," she whispered. "That's enough." The cowboy didn't pull away. He didn't kiss her either. But as the moon sank low and the fire burned out, they both knew the line between vengeance and desire had been crossed, and there was no crossing back. Dawn never came gently to the desert. It broke like a blade, cutting the horizon with a line of fire, spilling light over the wreckage of the night before. The camp was quiet now, too quiet. Smoke still rose from the ashes of burned wood and flesh, and the ground was littered with bodies that would never see another sunrise. The cowboy stood apart from it all, his hat low, his hand resting on the revolver that now sat heavy with emptiness. The fight had ended hours ago, but the weight of it pressed harder than the gun ever could. Lydia moved among the dead, her boots crunching over dry earth, her face pale in the morning light. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't relieved. She looked like a woman who had crawled out of hell, carrying it with her. "They're gone," she said, her voice cracked and hollow. "All of them." The cowboy didn't answer. She turned to him, eyes shining not with tears but with something colder. "Do you feel it? The quiet after vengeance? It doesn't heal, cowboy. It doesn't fill the hole. It just digs it deeper. He knew she was right. Every death he'd dealt, every ghost he carried, had never eased the burn inside him. Vengeance was a fire that never went out. It only consumed more until there was nothing left to burn but yourself. Lydia stepped closer, her hand trembling as she reached for his face. "You were supposed to be different," she whispered. "Supposed to be more than just another killer. But maybe that's all any of us ever are." Her lips brushed his, soft, fleeting, a kiss made of ash and dust. For a moment he let it happen. For a moment he wanted to believe there was something left in the world beyond blood. Then the gunshot cracked the dawn. His eyes widened. Pain tore through his chest. He staggered back, looking at her not with anger, not even with surprise, but with something like understanding. Lydia held the smoking revolver steady, tears finally breaking free, streaking down her dirt-stained face. "I can't let you go," she said, her voice breaking. "If I did, you'd haunt me like they did. And I can't carry another ghost." The cowboy fell to his knees, dust rising around him like smoke from a dying fire. He tried to speak, but no words came. His hand brushed the ground, his blood soaking into the dirt, swallowed by the land that had taken so many before him. She knelt beside him, cradling his head as his breath grew shallow. "I told you, cowboy," she whispered, pressing her forehead against his. "My questions were never about love. They were about hunger, and hunger always wins." He exhaled one last time, the sound lost to the wind. His eyes stayed open, fixed on the sky that stretched endless and blue above the broken world. Lydia kissed him once more, longer, deeper, a kiss of sorrow and surrender. Then she laid him gently on the ground, stood, and walked into the rising sun. Behind her, the desert kept its silence. Before her, only emptiness waited. And somewhere in that silence, the cowboy's ghost lingered. Another hunger carved into the endless wasteland of the West.